Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my product chat series. Today, our guest is Aishwarya, who is the product manager at YouTube. She moved from various roles like strategic planning analyst, sales operations, growth marketing manager to a product manager. I'm excited to chat with her. Thank you so much for being here, Aishwarya. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Rufida, and for that wonderful introduction. I'm so thrilled to be here.
For sure. Thank you. So, how about we start with your journey? There's so much that you did throughout your career. Can you tell more about it?
Absolutely. So I've been working for like almost 10 years now, and I am a software engineer by profession. So much like a lot of people, I started my journey in engineering, and I started as a network operating engineer in Cisco systems back in India. I think pretty quickly I realized that engineering wasn't for me. I really wanted more interface with people, with the business side of things. I like talking to people. And it was very hard for me to work in a job where I wasn't really getting to see the fruits of my labor as regularly as I would have liked to. And there wasn't as much interface with users. So I left that role without completing a year. Everyone advised me against it, but I knew this wasn't for me, so I did not see value in staying in it much longer. I switched careers and I moved to Google in India, where I worked in sales, like ad strategy for like large customer businesses, where most of our clients were based in the US.
Mm.
So this was, although I sales wasn't my dream to be
Yeah.
in, but I thought of this as like a way into Google because Google has so many roles. And I thought that, okay, let me just try something and then we'll figure it out from there. So I did sales for about 2.5 years.
Okay.
Um, and that just gave me a lot of confidence in like dealing with large customers because I'd never talked to customers of that scale before who dealt with Google. Then I left that role and I went to Dublin, Ireland, to work in sales operations and strategy, which was a very analytical role. And like being an engineer, I was always very analytical, so I really thrived in that role. But that stint in Dublin was like more of like a personal choice to also being able to travel Europe while doing
Oh.
something different. Yeah. So I tried that for a while, which was great fun. And then I moved to the US. I've been here for like the last 6 years almost.
Mm.
Um, and I moved here in that same sales strategy and ops role. But soon after, and this was a turning point in my career, soon after I moved to YouTube Music and Premium
Okay.
in the growth team. So that's where like I feel like I really found my stride. It was a new team, nascent team. They had just launched the YouTube Music app. So they
Okay.
were really looking to grow super quickly. They wanted someone with like great analytical chops and business chops to come in and really build the growth team from the ground up. So me and my manager at the time who brought me on board, we
Yeah.
really got to work and started building like a growth team and like what growth hacking means, what a growth marketer means, what a growth product manager means. Even though we weren't in product management, I did get to flex that muscle a lot just because of like how the org structure was. There was a lot of flexibility in the kind of things that you would be able to do. So that's when like I started dabbling my feet into product management a little bit. I interviewed a year later and I got into product management at YouTube Music and Premium. I did that for less than a year again, and I moved to Replit, which was a startup.
Wow.
Because, yeah, I was very hungry to just try different things because I was trying to find my stride. I was like, okay, what excites me? Like, this is my time. Let me try and like do different things. So I moved to Replit, which was again, oh my God, just a different ball game altogether. It was an education product, and the vision was like, how do you democratize software, right? Like, it should not be limited to people who have a really good laptop. You should be able to like really democratize. Good ideas can come from anywhere, and so you should be able to build that idea anywhere. And that was the vision of Replit CEO, which was a very compelling vision. I had such a blast working on Replit for like 6 to 8 months. I was a little bit worried at the time just because the economic environment was such, and just given my uh, immigration situation, I thought maybe I should be in more like stable grounds. So, which is why I also made a decision to go back to YouTube, which I always loved. Like YouTube, which is why I said that was the turning point in my career. I loved working on YouTube. and I made my way back. Now I am the product manager for the YouTube app that runs on television. I worked with the team to launch NFL, which was again like such a big journey for me. Um, and that product got so much love in the media. So many people are watching NFL. So yeah, so that was my journey, and it's been a whirlwind, but I have enjoyed every bit of it.
Wow, that I love it. I've never heard such an inspiring journey from anyone. I've been interviewing so many people, but I love how you move from like different roles, and I love the reasons behind it as well.
I'm so
Completely
glad. Yeah,
understandable.
yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing that. So when it comes to product management, what did you like since you had been like in engineering roles, you had been in like analytical roles? What did you like about product management specifically?
yeah. I remember when I first like found out about the role, right? Like that was very long back. I had just come to San Francisco. Someone told me, "Oh, product management is a thing." I did not understand it. I was like, "Why do you need like someone who's not coding
Yeah.
and who's not selling and who's not designing to like what are you doing?"
Yeah.
uh, right, because you have a designer, you have coder, you have sales, you have marketing, and all of these people whose job roles are very well defined. I was like, I don't understand what you're doing, like why is this a role? I didn't think about it too much after that. But once I started working on YouTube Music and Premium, and then I started actually like doing some product manager kind of things, I then realized the value of a product manager, right?
Yeah.
There, just because the role is so not well defined, that's what makes it interesting, that you're really responsible for so much of the product and accountable. You have to figure out what are the right problems to be solving, how does your product align with like the overall company mission, how do you achieve that mission, how will you solve for it, like what technologies are available, how will you influence the team, like you're accountable, but you're not the only decision maker, right? You have to convince the team. Everyone has such a strong point of view. How will you convince them that this is the right thing to do? So as I dabbled more and more into it, it was so challenging, Rufida, that I that really excited me. I was
Yeah.
like, these are all skills that one has to inculcate. You don't teach these skills in school anywhere, right?
Oh, way.
These,
Yeah.
right? Influencing skills, finding out, oh, where could the industry go like 5, 10 years down the road? How do you stay competitive? What problems do you solve for your user empathy? And that was just very exciting to me. I was like, there's no playbook for this. There is like a lot of people create these playbooks, but then you have to adapt to the situation that you're dealing with. And just the ambiguity and the challenging yet very visionary and very like tangible
Yeah.
outcomes of it all made it very exciting for me.
I like that. Yeah, there's so many things I can relate to specifically. Like there's so many people out there, like in terms of like engineers, UI, UX, they have like such strong opinions. And when I was
Yeah,
working as a product manager, I was the youngest. And I was like, how can I influence them when there's like they are like 20 to 30 like years older than me? And I'm like, how will I be able to convince them?
right.
Yeah, so first of all, it's like very intimidating, but I think you get a hang of it later.
Yeah.
So for you, what does a typical day in a life of a product manager looks like?
Um, that's a great question. My week, like each day, looks slightly different. So, but a typical day is mostly a lot of meetings, to be honest. It's in an 8 hour working day, there's going to be almost 6 hours of just taking meetings with people where you are checking in on project status with people. You're working on documents together to tell your stakeholders, your leadership, what are you working on. You're also preparing like launch documents to say that, oh, we tried this thing and we're going to launch this. You are pulling data to say that, oh, I did this experiment
Mm.
and this is how it's looking. What should we do next? What should be our next iteration? So depending on like the number of projects you're juggling and which stage each project is in, my days just peppered across each life cycle of the product, like whatever stage it is in. So it is a lot of meetings plus like regular check-in meetings with everyone. Because I am almost like a platform PM, I meet a lot with internal stakeholders who want to build on the platform. Uh, and I try to wake up really early because my day is so full of meetings. I try to wake up super early to just do some deep thinking work, to actually write docs, put my thinking down, um, read like product news, see where the industry is going, what the competitors are doing. Um, But typical day, very, very full of meetings. I think Friday is the only day which everyone at YouTube tries to protect, and not put meetings on the calendar so that people can actually get like deep work done.
Yeah. So with all these meetings, how do you get the work done? Do you block calendar?
I know a lot of people block calendars. Um, I try to block my calendar, but I also feel like a lot of times these meetings are essential. People need the time. They want to discuss these things with me. And I also find just getting regular check ins very helpful. So I try and put some blocks sometimes, but more often my strategy is to put my meetings back to back so
Okay.
that I don't have to context switch as much, like because I need a good chunk of time to do deep work. So I try and put all of my meetings back to back,
Mm-hmm.
and then I try to carve out a chunk that no one wants anyway because I'm done with my meetings. Um, and if I can't do that, I try to just answer some emails or do small tasks in between, which don't require a lot of deep thinking, so
Mm.
that I don't have to do those tasks later on.
Yeah.
So that's clear some of the time. So those are my two strategies: put meetings back to back, and then try and do like small things here and there, so that I have like deep thinking time for later.
Very helpful, yeah, because I feel the same when I have like meetings. Like one meeting is at 9 o'clock, it's from 9 to 10. The other one is at like 11 to this. I was like, I just have this 1 hour. Once I sit down and think about it, by that time, it's like the time for the other meeting.
Yeah.
Not getting enough time to just sit down and think about what do I have to do. So really great tips. Thank you for sharing that. What skills or qualities do you think a product manager should have?
Oh my God, there are so many. Okay, so I'll start with the ones that I feel are the most important and difficult, in my opinion, right? I think the first one is really being able to craft a compelling story, a vision for your product, and being able to communicate that out to your team, to your stakeholders. I think as a product manager, your responsibility, your one big responsibility should be that for your product, you have a very strong vision and narrative that everyone can almost look to as like, this is the end goal, right? What decisions should I make to reach this end goal? And they should feel like they don't need to come to me for that decision making then, because like your vision should do that, that they
Yeah.
should be able to make those at least high level trade-offs between whether we should do this or not. Does this take us one step towards our vision? And that is very hard to do,
Yeah.
crafting a compelling vision for your product. Most of what I see, at least from like day-to-day product managers out there, is more a product strategy, which is great, which aligns with your company's vision overall. But when your product is so big, like at YouTube, you can align to YouTube's vision overall, but you also need to know how you, as a subset of YouTube in the domain that you have, what will your platform, what will your smaller scope within YouTube will do to advance YouTube's vision. So I think that's number one, right? That's a skill I also like struggle with, and I'm like constantly working to craft.
Mm.
Um, the next skill I would say is user empathy, right? Once you have your vision, you need to make sure that you're solving the right user problems that advance that vision, right? Your users will have a ton of problems, but having user empathy and then having um, the prudence to actually pick what are the good problems that you should solve
Yeah.
that work towards your company's vision and your own product vision.
Mhm.
The third, I would say, is product strengths, product sense and strategy, right? If you know the vision, you know what problems user have, how will you solve it? How effectively and easily can your product solve those user problems? I think that's like a third big skill. Product sense to me has always been very elusive. It's like such a vague term. How do you define it?
Right.
Right? My understanding of it has always been like how effective and easy your product is at solving the user problem. And I try and embody that in like any product that I design. It may not be perfect. I think everyone has their own definition, but that's
I
the one,
agree. Yes.
yeah, I found most helpful. Um, the fourth, I would say, is execution. You need to be a very strong executor. At a lot of companies, you may get help, right? You have project managers who help product managers a lot if your scope is super large. So you may get help, but execution is another one you need to be super strong at. You need to get the work done after you've laid the vision and the roadmap. Um, the fifth, I would say, is analytical skills. I do see a lot of junior PMs not uh, sharpen the skill. They are very focused on high level, which is great. They're very like a lot of new PMs that I work with. They have very big aspirations, which is fantastic. But it's also critical that you know the data, you know how to analyze the data, how to pull the data to see if your product is actually solving the user problems, and to prioritize whatever strategy you lay out. um, and then I want to close this answer with what I said before, like crafting a compelling narrative. I think just compelling storytelling, right, in every day, that is super important. That's something I have seen is so critical and required in every day. Anything that I tell my engineer, they will ask me, I why is this important to solve? I don't agree with you. And you have to craft a whole narrative to really convince your team, your stakeholders why something is important. A vision can be like a one-time big lift, but storytelling is just part of like everyday things. So I would say those six skills, where I think the first and the sixth one, which is like vision and narrative and storytelling, is very similar but very, very important.
Very important. I completely agree. And thank you so much. This is very, very helpful, especially for me as well. I can relate to each one of them and I'm learning a lot too. So thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so if someone is a junior PM, if someone is coming from just like they are just graduating and they are coming as a junior or associate PM,
Yeah.
they would be learning these skills, most of the skills on the job.
Yeah.
So how can they be prepared before the job? How can they adapt it during like maybe their school time or by reading any books, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think for someone who doesn't have experience but wants to get into this world, right? I would say try and practicing it in your daily life
Mm,
to at least sharpen the individual skills, right? Um, so what I mean by that is just everyday product design and critique. Think about everyday products around you
yeah,
and think about what you like about them, what you don't like about them, and really critique them. How would you make them better? How effective are they at solving a problem? Could that problem be solved in a different way, in a more effective way, in a more beautiful way, right?
mhm,
So that's one big part of like developing a good product sense.
yeah,
I think the second one would be um, communication. I said is a very big part of PM's everyday life, which is hard to get hands-on experience with, right? You'll meet all kinds of people in your job, and it'll be a very different product or team culture, which you can't always foresee. You don't know what kind of a team or what kind of people you're going to interact with. Um, the advice I have there is whatever job you're in, or even if you're studying, right?
yeah,
Try and really be empathetic to the people that you're working with or who you're interacting with, and see if there are opportunities for you to almost act as an influencer. Um, and they say influence without authority, right? As a product manager, your job is to influence.
yeah,
So I think keeping that in the back of your head and trying to practice influencing skills without being authoritative or directive within your peer group, I think that's a fantastic skill to practice, if you know that that's what you're looking for.
yeah,
Um, and the third one I would say is if you're actually ready to do some product work,
mm-hmm,
uh, at least at Google, we have like 20% opportunities. I know companies may have like different frameworks to help people get experience into roles that they would otherwise not be fully hired into yet. That is one option. But I would also say try and reach out to people. I know a lot of people. This is a tough sell, but I know a lot of people just look for like OPM help,
yeah,
manage their day to day. Try and see if you're really ready to interact with like the real world and solving real product problems, and if you can take up some things on the side. I did that when I was not a product manager. I reached out to some volunteer just like organizations which were doing some pro bono work, and they actually needed product managers for
yeah.
like very specific problems. So you might find volunteer organizations like that where you could safely, it's a safer environment because you're volunteering your work, it's pro bono, but you still might get like really good experience.
Makes sense. This was actually my another question, like how someone, if they don't have experience, how they can get into product management. So you mentioned about like volunteer opportunities could be there for startups who might not have launched yet. What other ways do you think anyone could get into product management?
So I would say other things would be you're practicing skills for sure, right? Like you do a lot of mock interviews, read books, see what kind of questions, those kind of things will help you prepare for the interview. I think that's a very important skill to have. Um, the other way I would think is try to look at what current role or maybe education specialization you're in, and try to do a skills matching. So, for instance, what I mean by that is when I first joined product management, I joined as a growth PM. A
Mhm.
growth PM is very data oriented. Their day to day job is like digging into the data, figuring out the whole user funnel acquisition, retention, activation, and getting those users to stay, like designing um, ideas that would uh, improve user retention. So, the reason I picked that role was because it was a very good skills match for me because I was very data savvy. So I felt like I could have good impact right away. So I would say, like, that's one thing you can prepare for as you look into getting into product management. Do a skills check on yourself, see where your strengths are. Um, and see if you can find a match with like the right type of product management because there are so many types of product work. Try
Yes.
to find like a right match which might be very helpful
Yeah.
for a foot in the door. It will set you up for success. You'll actually like gain confidence if you're able to like have quick wins fairly early on in your product management career.
Completely agreed. I think there's so many transferable skills when it comes to PM only. There's so many times like you're actually doing PM work, but you don't have that title out there.
Yeah,
Um, so you just have to find those transferable skills and you need to tell a way again, the same thing that you mentioned about storytelling. You need to find a way that you can tell your story in a product management way. Um,
correct.
the other question I had for you was if you have interviewed anyone in the past for product management roles, what do you look for in a candidate?
Yeah. So I look for two big things. One is structure, and the second is creativity, right? I value structure a lot because it's so difficult to convey your ideas to someone, either in person or on GVC or in writing. So I really want clarity of thought. When I ask you a question, how do you frame your answer? You can take your time to tell me your answer, but how do you frame it? Am I able to follow it or do I lose track of it midway, right? And even if I lose track, are you structuring and framing your answer in a way that you consistently bring me back into your answer? So, structure and clarity of thought is the first thing I'm looking for. The second thing I'm looking for is creativity and vision, right? How creative are you in your ideas and your solutions that you're presenting? Are you thinking out of the box? Are you just giving me like very boring solutions? So that's the second thing that I look for, creativity. Um, the third thing I know a lot of people look for, um, I am okay if you're not very comprehensive. I know a lot of people care about how comprehensive are you in your thinking. um, the reason I give a little bit of leeway on this is because interviews are like 30 minutes long. You do intros. It's such a short amount of time to be super comprehensive. Um, Even if you can demonstrate like some core skills that you have good structure, you have user empathy, you can creatively think about a problem. I'm okay if you're not as comprehensive. And that is just my perspective, just given the time. Because I'm sure, like, time permitting, a lot of people can be very, very comprehensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Agreed. So that was okay, what you look for in an applicant. What do you think? How can someone get into, we spoke about product management, if someone wants to get into YouTube specifically,
Yeah.
advice would you have for them?
Yeah. So YouTube specifically, I don't think there's anything particular because Google does their product management interviews across the board. It's not team specific. So we do it. The interview questions are largely going to be the same no matter which team you're interviewing for. But let's say you're super passionate about YouTube. I would say passion is what it is, right? What product you want to work for. Because a lot of times when you're interviewing, your desire to actually work on that team or lack of will come across in the interview, right? They might ask you, why do you want to work on this team? And that's your time to like really convey why YouTube, why do you want to work on YouTube, what excites you about YouTube. And I remember I specifically wanted to work on YouTube. I also got lucky that my manager at the time was at YouTube and she asked me to come on board. But I loved the product, and the reason for me was that YouTube had helped me grow. So much of what I had learned on YouTube. And I just love that there existed such a democratized platform that I could just go and literally for free learn anything that I wanted to. There was like literally the world of content was on YouTube. So I was so deeply passionate about the product that I think it came across in my interviews when I was just having conversations. So you won't need to do any specific preparation for your interviews, but I think it mostly comes down to how passionate you are about the product.
It shows like either it's like, okay, you really, really want that job, like just because you don't have anything right now, or
Yeah,
you actually want to work for that industry or that specific
yeah,
company. It shows, even if you try to make it up, it shows from your expressions as well.
exactly.
So two last questions. What do you, since product management is a very hyped field right now,
Yeah.
everyone wants to get into product management. What three things would you tell them that these are three biggest misconceptions about product management?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say, I think we touched upon this briefly. The first biggest misconception is not all product management is the same.
Mhm.
I would say anytime you're interviewing or looking to interview, looking for a product management role, like I said before, do a skills check,
Yeah.
understand what are your current skills and what is required for that particular role, right? You may or may not be a good fit for it. For example, if you are someone who's really passionate about big picture thinking, who's passionate about, I want to build 0 to 1 products, maybe growth or platform is not for you because a lot of times growth is about making incremental wins so that they add up to
Right.
something big. Platform is about scaling product delivery, right? You already have potentially a product, unless your product is a platform itself,
Exactly. Yeah.
AWS. Most of the times, platform comes later on when you're talking about scaling delivery. So I would say do a skills check. Find out what is the role, what are your skills, is there a skills difference, and should you work on filling the gap, filling the skills gap, or should you find something that's a better match? And then you can go into something that you are really passionate about, right? Those are the two parts. So, first things, check for that. Not all PM roles are the same. Check for your skills and find something that's well suited to your skills. The second one, I would say, and this is something I learned on the job, right? A lot of people say that a product manager is the CEO of the product. Not true. Uh, yeah, it is not true. Um, you are expected to know everything about the product, like, right? That's a big responsibility that whenever something happens to the product, you should know. You
Yeah.
are accountable, you are responsible. But when I think of a CEO, when I first heard that phrase and I thought of a CEO and I was like, oh, that's great. Like I make all the decisions. That's not true. You do not make all the decisions. Any vision you paint, any strategy you put down, any roadmap you make, you have to bring your team along with it. Sure, the first idea may come from you, but even then, you need to bring your team along. You can't craft a vision, a narrative, a strategy, a roadmap all by yourself. So I think that's the second biggest misconception for me, where you should not operate as a directive,
Yeah.
as the authoritative figure. You need to be influential. People who you're working with are not the people who you're managing. You don't manage your UX.
That's
You
the
don't.
biggest misconception about product managers, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they're not. You're not managing them.
Yeah.
So you need to treat them like peers, and you need to bring them along. You need to influence them. You need to help them, and you need to work as a team.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one last question. What
Yeah.
advice would you have for aspiring product managers or anyone who wants to transition into the field?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the things that we said, right? Educate yourself about the different types of product management. Do a skills check, find out where you have a skills gap, and do a lot of preparation in all aspects. And the aspects being, um, think about like what are the big visions of each tech company, right? How would you operate if you were a leader of that tech company? How would you think decades ahead and think about like a compelling vision that can sustain, right? Then I think the other thing is product sense and design that I talked about. How do you effectively and easily and beautifully solve problems for your user? Sharpen those skills, critique everyday products, and think about like a very good product design sense because you would be asked those questions
Right.
repeatedly in your interviews. Third is analytical skills. You have to be super sharp in your analytical chops. If you will be constantly asked questions like, what metrics would you design? What trade offs would you make in your metrics? If something goes wrong, how do you debug it? How do you find out why the data is tanking? these things should be second nature to you. You should know exactly what the framework is for like finding out what the problems are. And there are frameworks out there that you could practice. So that's the third skill that I would say. I think the fourth one is um, technical skills. You don't need to learn how to code, in my experience. I have not yet had to code, but I think you need to be able to talk intelligently with your engineers. You should be able to understand their problems. When they say something takes so long to code, you should be able to understand why it takes long to code and be ready to unblock them. Be ready to make trade offs with them, tech trade offs with them, have conversations with them about creating technical debt. About speed trade-offs. If you're looking for a big feature to put on your page, it might slow down things. How do you think about those trade-offs? So be prepared to have those conversations very intelligently with your engineers to really build that trust and credibility. So yeah, so I would say those four skills, practice them in everyday life. And then there are a ton of books out there. Some of the popular ones, I think by Lewis Lynn, are like 100 product management questions, which was a great book.
So good. I just have it right here somewhere. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a great book, even that, and I love the cracking the PM interview, and then there's same one from the same author, a new one. I forgot the name, but yeah,
Yeah.
those are top three favorite ones for me.
Yeah, there's another one called System Design by Alex Zhu.
I
That's
have,
a great book.
I
Um,
read that one.
yeah, for technical interviews, that's a fantastic book. It covers trade-offs in technical design and just high-level system architecture. You don't need to code, and it's fantastic for just understanding core things about different big apps out there: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Google Maps. They give you like the high-level system of each of those, and it's super helpful.
Oh, perfect. I will definitely read that. But I
Yeah,
completely agree. Coding is not important only if you're not a technical product manager, then it might be required.
right.
But in terms of if you're just a product manager, then you can go without coding. But technical knowledge is so important, as simple as what is an API.
Yeah,
Simple as
exactly.
that. When I went to product management, when I had this first internship, I had no idea what the API is and what they're even talking about. So
Yeah,
it's very, very important to know this before you even go for an interview.
yeah,
Um, because if you're going, and especially with this market, you definitely need to know anything and everything.
yeah.
So yeah,
I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you so much. This was very, very helpful. I learned so much, honestly, from you. So thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Rafi. That was so nice talking to you.
Same here. Thank you again.